obviously Candace Owens has the capacity to kill a human. I mean, like, if somebody did anything to my child, anything, you break into my house, you do anything that I think is going to harm my child, there's never been a question in my mind about whether or not I have the capacity to kill a human. If Fauci came at my kid with a vaccine, I'm not gonna finish that sentence because I know Big Pharma has big guns, and so I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, I don't think the Big Pharma is murdering political commentators. Also, why are you defensive about whether you would kill someone or not? And again, why are you talking about that as if it's hypothetical? You spent 2 years telling your impressionable audience not to take the vaccine. We don't have to debate whether you'd be willing to kill people. You've already eagerly pursued that for literally years for your own personal profit. So let's just move past the hypotheticals. Also, you know how vaccination doesn't work? That the head of the CDC runs at your family with a needle. That's not how that actually works. And if anything is going to endanger your kid, it's the diseases that you're apparently opening them up to by apparently choosing not to vaccinate them. Anyway, all this to say, COVID is still something that you should be worried about, but there is a little bit of good news. And while we will let you know about the bad news, when the good news comes, we also want you to know about that. There's a new study that apparently is showing that long COVID symptoms can over time begin to abate, at least in some cases. So these include symptoms like shortness of breath, cognitive difficulties, and other symptoms that worsen even if you don't use much physical or mental effort. These are things that have affected a lot of people for months and months after being infected with COVID. That said, there was this study of health records of people in Israel covering nearly 2 million people over the course of a year and a half or so. And those with a mild initial infection had a significantly higher risk of health outcomes like what you associate with long COVID. But most symptoms from long COVID cleared up within 12 months for the people who had mild initial infections. This is just one study, we're gonna need more. And it doesn't mean that people who had really bad infections aren't gonna still suffer from long COVID. But there is now some reason to believe that symptoms from long COVID might begin to abate, and that is good news. Unfortunately, while that has gone away, Candace Owens is still here. So A.B., what do you think?
Honestly, I just think that the COVID thing shouldn't have ever been politicized like whatsoever. I think that's what put us in the danger zone because we just didn't know enough about it. And because of all the politics that happened, a lot of people received misinformation, right? Even people who weren't necessarily far right followers were scared to take the vaccine because they just weren't sure. I'll be honest, I was one of those people in the beginning. I was like, I don't know what is going on here, right? Like I wasn't sure if it was safe or not, but it was just because of all of the politics that was surrounded around it at the end of the day. Now, as a law student, sis, what we don't want to do is say that we would be willing to like kill people because that could come up later, right? Like they're using rap lyrics against people these days, right? They're using your Twitter feed against you these days, baby. Once it's on the internet, it's out there. So I just hope you never come into a place or a position where someone ends up unalived around you.
Yeah. Well, remember, she was defending Andrew Tate, who loves to confess his crimes. What is she saying in voicemails if this is what she's saying on her show?
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.